Hi, Zizaran here with another video. I'm going to talk about Diablo 4, a little bit about my Blizzcon experience, and some of the questions and answers I got directly from the developers of Diablo 4. For those of you who don't know me, I am primarily a Path of Exile player, and I played a lot of Diablo 2. It was pretty much my entire middle-aged life. I don't know what to call it, like 15 to 26. Probably around 20 or 19,000 hours in Diablo 2. Only 2 or 3,000 hours in Diablo 3. And I think I've streamed over 18,000 hours of Path of Exile. So this is like the primary genre I play. The only one that I can actually back up is Path of Exile, since that is all on stream. But hey, let's move into it. So first, I want to cover some of the positives. I went over all of these yesterday in a long VOD on stream. I took like 4 hours to go over the entire VOD of me playing Diablo 4 with MrLlama at BlizzCon, and went like slowly through the VOD, talked at great length about everything. And this is going to be like a sum up video about like the positives and negatives and my like hopes for the future for Diablo 4. So I've been fairly critical on all of this. One of the main things to remember is that it's very far away from completion. At the venue, they said that it's not even coming out Blizzard soon. So my guess is at the very fastest 2022, maybe as late as 23 or 24 wouldn't surprise me either. But at least that means that the fact that they already have a playable demo, and while there's a ton of things wrong with that playable demo, that means they have a long time to fix it. So I'm going to try to be as vocal as possible in all the negative things, which I feel is really important to not be in the main game. But yeah, we'll start out with the good things. So the game felt really good to play. Like in some games, it can sometimes feel like when you're hitting something, like especially in MMOs and stuff, or any game with tab targeting, it can feel like, you're not really hitting the monster. It's sort of like you're hitting in its direction and it takes damage. That never really feels good. In this game, it really feels like your character is hitting the monster. So the combat is fairly smooth, already has a nice feel to it. That the demo is very easy and stuff, but that's not something I was expecting to be a crazy difficulty, especially it being like a mid-level thing. You started on a level 20 character, not a level 1. So that was pretty good. And the engine itself is great. While Diablo 3 already has fairly good graphics, I feel like there was a pretty big difference in especially how you interact with the world itself. Everything or most things around you sort of affected by gravity. You'll see rocks and pebbles and pieces of table sort of flying away when you're using like a spell that has like a gravity, right? Like there's like a ground slam type spell, and like, the teleport spells, like you'll see like a shockwave and things moving away from you, which feels really great. Another thing as well that is important for the engine is the druid, and the demo has a boulder, and that can roll over things and roll it with them and push things off cliffs and edges. So that is like something I really like. Small touches like that are really important for me. One of the really cool things, one of the developers, Tiffany, which was probably one of the things that made me more enthusiastic about it. You could it's one of the developers, like with, for example, Chris Wilson, you can hear the passion when he talks about the game, right? Same with her. She would interrupt people and be like, right, but have you heard about this cool thing? Which is great in my opinion, and stuff like that gets me very excited for things. And she was particularly very excited about the engine, and something they were explaining was there's small things like the weather. For example, if it's raining, your character will start getting wet, and you can visibly see that your character is wet. And if you go inside a building that's warm, it will gradually get dry. So stuff like that makes the world feel more alive and living. Same with small holes will be filled with water, and small streams will form from rain. And there's the druid spell that makes cyclones and causes rain and stuff. If it's already raining, it won't cause new rain, it'll cause the existing rain to become that much bigger. So the fact that there are weather effects and stuff, definitely only a very small thing that doesn't effectively do anything or matter, but does make the world feel more alive. A lot of the sorceress spells were fun. I really liked Sork. The only thing that had a cooldown, and definitely should, was Conduit, which is sort of, you turn into like a ball of lightning and completely overpowered. It's probably going to get balanced because you were just zapping around, killing everything, and it seems like you don't take damage. You might take damage, but you're just zapping around, right? So you don't really notice much. All the other Sork spells didn't really have a cooldown. It's just that they used a lot of your mana, so you'd probably have to invest into mana regen, and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of the Druid and Barbarian spells had like a very long cooldown. They didn't really feel good to use, and I didn't like that. But yeah, Sork felt like pretty fun there. The Druid Boulder as well was like insanely fun to use. For Druid, I felt like it was mostly like the Boulder and some sort of ground slam thing that was like very, very fun to use. And the other spells, they were sort of whatever. But at least all of Sork ones were like pretty great. So Diablo 4 is set in like an open world type thing. It's not as linear as previous games. I'm optimistic for that. It's very different than what I'm used to. I don't necessarily feel every game has to be the same. I don't want Diablo 4 to be just a better version of Path of Exile or a better version of Diablo 3. Like, different is cool. It might fail, but you know, I'm excited for open world. A little bit skeptical about how like scaling is going to use. They did talk about like scaling, and that always makes me like worry and fear for things like Oblivion, where the scaling was just terrible. I'm sure there are good ways to do it, and I hope they do it, but everything scaling with your level is never particularly fun. So I hope that that's limited scaling and that there will be high and low level areas, which in the demo it seemed like there was, because you're level 20 in the demo and there is a level 25 area. So that is promising. They're also introducing a new map type thing, and it's basically you add keys to dungeons and it will add modifiers and increase your rewards. So basically maps in Path of Exile. Sounds like a pretty cool way to do it. They weren't in the demo yet, like dungeons were, but not like, you know, the map part. So interested to see how that turns out. Right, now let me talk about the negatives. And a lot of this might sound really harsh and stuff, especially considering it's a 20-minute demo. And on top of that, it's over 3 or 4 years out from actually being released. I just feel like it's more important to be very vocal about things. So during the gameplay trailer, we saw runes and rune words and stuff like that. And I was basically, I think it was in the first row, and I was screaming because rune words was my favorite thing about Diablo 2. I love them. I thought they were added so much. They were so great. They made finding runes exciting. So when they brought them back, I was like, oh my god, finally. They're just gonna like learn from their mistakes of Diablo 3, and they're gonna add cool things from Diablo 2 and make a great game. But then I saw what they've done to rune words, and I felt betrayed. I feel like every time I mention them on stream now, I say rune words because I don't understand what they are, except it's like they're so bad. Okay, so let me explain how rune words work in Diablo 2. In Diablo 2, you find runes throughout the world. Some of them are insanely rare, where they're like, I really need to buy this off someone, I'm not going to be able to find it myself. And a lot of them are very common, especially the ones for low level items. And then like you have a bunch of runes, and then you have to find a base type, right? So say you find a strapped leather with 2 sockets, and you're like, hey, I can make a stealth armor, which is a really, really good low level armor in Diablo 2. And I think it's a Tal Eth or something like that. Can't remember, I haven't played for a very long time. And that makes you, and it's like basically a construct your own unique item, and it matters a lot what base type you find it in. For the in-game items, you really want to try to get that proper, really good base 6 socket or 4 socket or 5 socket or whatever you're looking for, to make that rune word. And for me, that was really cool. It made finding like white base types, or ethereal, which is like sort of strong ones, but they can get destroyed over time, depending on what you were going to use it on. That made base types really exciting. It made runes really exciting, and the items were really cool and like fairly unique. So they were sort of like create your own unique items. But in Diablo 4, the only thing is that they're called the same. They're runes and rune words. That's the only similarity. So in Diablo 4, there's a cause and effect. So the ones that we got to play with, in the demo was cause, which was from a dull rune, I think. And the cause was you pop a life flask. Now the flask system is gonna get changed a lot apparently, and I think they said they were not happy with the current flask system, so I don't really need to like shit on that too much. But the current one is, yeah, you pop a flask and X happens, and the X is caused by another rune, which in the demo was Vex. And Vex is you gain 50% crit chance. So these two together, the rune word is then every time you pop a life flask, you get 50% crit chance. Now this is like a weird implementation of sort of like, you know, this specific one is very similar to Diamond Flasks from Path of Exile. I think it's terrible. I think it's very... I think I can't really get excited for this. I'm probably... It's the most disappointing thing out of anything from the demo was the way they've currently done rune words. That's why I want to be... And I did say this to the developers too. And currently it seems like sockets is max 2, which means you can only do 1 cause and 1 effect. Even if it was like 1 cause, 3 effects, I don't particularly think that's great. I'm guessing they would have, I don't know if they'll have skill specific ones, but maybe they'll be like on a crit or on attack or when you take a hit. Still, none of that really like stands out to me as exciting. Especially for somebody who like really loved the Diablo 2 rune words. Now, all of this isn't necessarily the right thing or correct, because I know there's a lot of, even in my chat yesterday, a lot of people said they hated rune words, especially the more overpowered ones, which I can agree with, like Enigma, which would give any character teleport. But I still really, I want rune words back, like proper ones. Like they were one of the most exciting things, and they added like a whole new economy around them. I don't feel like the current rune words will do the same. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them, but that's like the main one for me. Other than that, let's talk a little bit about itemization. This is also something that I hope changes a lot. I do understand the need for making it simple for letting the game be accessible to new players, but especially me, who plays like, well, arguably way too much, but still, you know, that's the point of view I'm arguing for, right? I like it when it's a very, very in-depth itemization. I love like class-specific skills. I loved stats in Diablo 2. Diablo 4 has no stats, and regardless if you were a barbarian or a sorcerer, at least in the demo, they both just had attack. So attack on a weapon would increase the sorcerer's spells and the barbarian's hits. So it's the same stat on rings, weapons. I think this is terrible. I think it's very unexciting. So same with defense. Those are both... I don't know much more I can say about that except that, oh my god, please change this. That's very boring. I mean, yeah, it's great for accessibility. It's super easy compared to Path of Exile to understand. Like, Path of Exile might arguably be too complicated because the amount of players I know that have between 500 and 1,000 hours and still struggle while understanding what an item is worth, or if it's good for their character, if it's even an upgrade. That is way too high. So I can totally get on board with that. You don't necessarily need Path of Exile's complexity. While I do enjoy that, especially as somebody who does know these things, they're great for me. They definitely like hinder accessibility and stuff. But I feel like there's a happy middle ground where it's not like attack good, right? There can be more than that. So definitely hopefully that. They did say we had like a lunch with them, and they said they had big hopes for the crafting system. It's not really in yet. In the demo there is no crafting, and they did say that they were excited to have a good crafting system in. So I'm hoping that will be good, because crafting is currently one of my favorite things in Path of Exile. The skill tree as well, and this is something I don't think is going to change. So from what they say, you can over time max out every single skill, and there's not going to be much of a choice there. You only choose which one is going to be active. I love similar things in Diablo 2 where, you know, you actually have to choose, and then you can get a full respec if you want to, but there should be some choice. A reason to have different characters and stuff like that is fun to me. That doesn't seem like something they want to change. The talent tree system as well. This seems like they said was going to change a lot. There's currently only damage on the talent tree. There is no utilities whatsoever. Literally only damage. Like, do you want some more damage? Some crit damage? Some crit chance? Some more damage, right? There's no, like, nothing like add a new way for something to work. And I'm a little worried about, they did say to put the focus on that very heavily on unique items. But a little worried about the talent tree system, but at least that was something they were like, no, don't worry, that will change. I do hope they make it a lot bigger too. Path of Exiles, again, way too complicated, very little accessibility. However, I feel like a middle ground or something like what Last Epoch has is probably more perfect. Grim Dawn as well, arguably more complicated, but I think Last Epoch has kind of nailed it. Both in the talent tree, skill tree, and stuff like that. They have a lot of unique things to like change the way a skill works, add additional or something that you can do in Last Epoch, right? Say if you have a fireball, you have some things like add additional projectiles, and then like the main thing of it might do less damage, or you can have like you have one projectile, but that projectile does a lot of damage. Maybe it spreads. Like there's like so many cool ways of changing the same thing in Last Epoch, and stuff like that is what I like. Again, like Path of Exile, if you're not a Path of Exile player, a lot of you might have been put off by seeing the skill trees. It's very big and complicated. However, when you actually look at a heat map showing what nodes are taking the most, a lot of them are dead nodes, right? They're not really taken. So there's no need for it to be that intimidating. I would say the Sorcerer skill tree was the best one out of the ones I saw, or sorry, talent tree. So the Sorcerer's talent tree was the best one out of the ones I saw. And if that was 3 times as big, or like, 3 trees like that, with different utilities and ways to like change skills, that would be really cool. There would be a lot of choice, and there would be a reason to have different sorts. Like, oh, I have a lightning sort for this boss, and like, I might make a frost sort for like this specific dungeon. Stuff like that really stands out to me as like, like you have to have great choices. You want there to be like, I think the best way a developer once told me, he wanted the choice to be between different OPs, right? Between different overpowered things. So you're sitting there like, oh, this is so great. I really want this, but then I don't get this, and that is also so good for these different reasons. Like, one of the worst things in a game for me is when, well, why would I take anything else? This is like clearly superior. It's way better, right? And then you sort of end up with everyone with the same build. It's so exciting for me in games when everyone's like, oh, that's such a cool approach to that. Like, yeah, you might not be able to kill that boss, but like, this is really cool. I see why you did that. So there's a lot of things they can change there. Loot as well. Well, I did say itemization was kind of bland and boring. Uniques weren't as bad. Definitely like still the same attack problem stuff, but at least uniques like do have like some sort of cool things like summon hydras and cool things. And they said they were going to use unique items to change how spells work completely. So that could be interesting. But as we're speaking about loot, Diablo 4 has personalized loot. A lot of people seem to give applause at this. I feel like this is one of the negative things where I might be in the minority. The Diablo 2 loot system, or at least the option of having it like the Diablo 2 loot system like Path of Exile has, where you can set it to free-for-all, is in my opinion the most fun. I love the idea of like doing, public parties, and whoever's the fastest looter gets all the loot. But I wouldn't be opposed to having something like short or permanent allocation as well. However, in Diablo 4, it is personalized loot. So whatever drops for you, other people will not see at all. So regardless, that is something I don't like. If it's gonna drop something and maybe it's allocated to a different player, and you go like, hey, I actually need that for my build. Can I trade for it? That's fun, in my opinion. Whereas personalized loot, meh, kind of boring. Gonna have to keep linking stuff like, hey, this drop for me. Do you need it? I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of that. The current level cap is level 40, and they do seem to want to have a reachable max level. And what I mean by that, in like Diablo 2 and Path of Exile, have what I would call for most people an unreachable max level. And what that means is that in both games, you are considered max level somewhere around 85 to 95. And any level from then, like, you will get a skill point, and it is a good feeling to level up. every time up until 100. Even at 99, it could like give you a jewel socket or stats that you need, something nice, right? So every level feels good. However, for most players, you're never going to be at the level cap, not progressing and not gaining anything, right? Like, you don't normally in Path of Exile continue playing a level 100 character because, at least for me, that feeling of, well, I'm wasting experience right now. I could be leveling up another character. So if I do hit level 100, and in P we have around 8, I've never really played any of those level 100 characters. The exception being sometimes I would make them into a boss farmer. So they do seem to be fans of the Paragon system. Now, they did say they didn't like the Paragon system in Diablo 3, but they do want to make sure that players have a reason to play max level characters. I kind of hate it when this is infinite. I would rather it like, whether it takes like a week, 3 weeks, or 2 months. Well, I don't particularly have a preference there. Like, actually, like something around like 2 or 3 weeks to max level, or actual max level, is pretty great in my opinion, because then you can have like the speedrunners and people racing will be pushing for that and have a finite end. Whereas when it's an infinite end, it's very, you're just gonna keep going and going, and when do you stop when you're a speedrunner? So obviously slightly selfish there. It's like, I like the idea of like a finish line, not just like, oh, I'm at Paragon level 17,162, I've been sitting down for so long. But yeah, so, and again, all of those things that I'm saying, both positive and negatives, that's just the way I like about things. There's other streamers and other people that disagreed with a lot of them, and that's fine. Like, you want to just be vocal about the things that you like. It's just an opinion, don't lynch me. We're allowed to disagree, I think. It is 2019 though, so it's not very cool to disagree. But anyway, that's like the main things that I feel and hope. I have a lot of hopes for the future. I feel like the mapping system could be really cool. The randomized like dungeons were going to be randomized. I really do love, like, for example, Mephisto farming in Diablo 2, when you do a boss over and over and over again until you're like, you know what, I have nailed this. But yeah, as a game that isn't out for so long, I think it'll be good. Regardless, it'll probably be even more people that play this than Path of Exile, just because of the sheer fan base of Blizzard. So many of the people who play Blizzard games might not even have heard of Path of Exile. And while PoE is definitely on the rise up, and it's going to be really exciting to see what they come out for with an ExileCon, which is in like 8 days or something. Yeah, I'm excited. At least the bottom line is that more ARPGs are coming out. It's rumored that the game teased by Riot is either an MMO or an ARPG. I think it's an ARPG. And yeah, exciting stuff coming. So, and I did have time to sit down and have lunch with the devs, as I mentioned, and I also got to go to a small like media interview where I got to ask questions. They called me Blue. I asked a little bit about things. So hardcore is going to be hardcore PvP as well, which I think is great. That means that if you're playing hardcore mode, which is permadeath, and you PvP, that is also permadeath, which, especially as a streamer, makes for a lot of fun moments. And in Diablo 2, that was my favorite thing. Like, I only played hardcore in Diablo 2, and it's just like really fun when you have enough hours to sink into it. Obviously, if you only have a few hours per day, it can be shitty to lose your entire character. But that's something I'm very, very excited for. I forgot to ask about things like logout macro, logging out, or what happens when your internet disconnects. So I'm sorry for that. I'm going to try to reach out to them and ask that. I did ask a little bit about the other games that the developers played as well. A lot of them had played like a lot of Diablo 2. Several of them played Path of Exile. The guy who was in charge of like maps and map design and like, you know, the way things look, he had like a level 97 PoE character at the moment. So that was really cool. Like the fact that like they're playing different games and games by competitors. Last Epoch, Path of Diablo, which is a mod for Diablo 2, which has some crossover elements from Path of Exile. they have these games at their office and they play them there for like research and stuff, which I think is really important because other games can end up coming up with something and you're like, this is really cool, but we could also do this thing. So that's very exciting for me. I think it's always important to learn from what other people are doing. So it's good to hear. A couple of them sounded extremely passionate. Again, like Tiffany was probably the one that stood out to me the most, and that was really, really great to hear. I feel like a lot of the more and more you get into development as a job, it gets harder to play, especially your own game. So hearing that they were like really into gaming and stuff, that's really cool in my opinion. That's something that's big for me. I asked a little bit about how like rare our items going to be, and we also asked how like what is the best in slot going to be. I got sort of a non-answer for that. They said they liked rare items, but they don't want items to be too rare, and I was like, that's very political. So that was a bit of a non-answer, and I was like, okay, didn't really give me anything more. But they do want items to drop. They said they wanted legendaries or uniques to drop less than in Diablo 3, which is good. Apparently it's currently rainy unique, so that's pretty boring. There is also like a mythic thing as well, and there's ancient legendaries, which I'm not really familiar with, but from what I understand it's just a rare drop of a legendary with a better roll. They did want, like, it does seem like legendaries are going to be the best in slot because the mythic is something that is limited to 1 per character, so you can only have 1 mythic. Rares don't seem like they're going to be best in slot at all. It seems like they're going to be exclusively an early game thing. I don't like that at all. I think I really like when rares are normally the best in slot. I would like legendaries to have a really heavy roll. Say String of Airs or something had like 10 to 1000 life, or something had like 300 to 700 DPS. Like some items with like really, really heavy rolls, I think is really cool. And you know, going like, oh my god, I just got like a max roll, right? For me, very, very exciting. I love the more like RNGs involved, the more fun in my opinion. But just having like very static uniques with bland rules and having them be best in slot, not great. Oh, another thing I want to talk about as well. We did talk a lot about binding, and like the binding system. And they did say the more rare an item is going to be. So if it's from like the end boss on the hardest difficulty, it was most likely going to be bind on pickup. I'm not a big fan of bind on pickup or bind on equip. They did say something about bind on trading, which I've never heard of before. It sounds really cool, and I actually really like this concept. So it basically means that it drops for me, and I might, from what I understand, I might even be able to use it, and it won't bind at all. So I could use it, but then I decide I want to sell it. And if you buy it off me, you can't flip it. You can't resell it, because it binds to you when you get traded it. Which is kind of a cool thing. I actually kind of like that concept, surprisingly, because I'm normally super against any bind. Bind on equip, bind on pickup, I don't like it at all. If I'm able to kill and farm the endgame boss, and I want to do that over and over again, maybe I become, let's say Lilith is the endgame boss, right? Very few people can farm it. People go like, hey Ziz, you know, I'm really looking to buy this at the moment. Can you farm Lilith and sell it to me? I'll be like, yeah dude, just pay me, like, you got to pay out your ass for that. So that's something that's really fun for me. Instead of, I mean, maybe we'll be able to boost people. Go like, yeah, I'll bring you with me and make the fight twice as hard. Just stand in the corner. But that could be weird on hardcore too. So we'll see how it works. But yeah, very skeptical to bind on pickup. I think like out of all the things I just last talked about with the devs, PvP sounds really exciting. They're like thinking about doing a lot of things. They were talking about like PvP is a very main focus for them, it seemed. I did bring up like the Path of Exile Battle Royale and how much fun I had in that. And they did say they had like thought about stuff like that as well as they've been thinking about PvP zones. And I said something like, I would be really cool if you put like a really rare drop or a really rare monster in PvP zones. So especially on hardcore, you'd be like, I don't know if I want to risk going in there and losing my character, but I really want that rare drop. Like that would be really cool. And you could have people camping it, trying to kill you and get all your stuff. Oh, they did also say that they were thinking about having, if you kill another player in PvP, you could loot all their stuff. Similar to Diablo 2. So, a lot of cool stuff, especially on the PvP front. The final thing that I want to talk about was the monetization. So from what I understand, they're leaning towards buy to play and microtransactions. Uh, I'm not a fan and a fan at the same time, and I'll try to explain why. Um, so I don't like buy to play. I think buy to play is very archaic, outdated, and I don't like it. Especially buy to play on its own. I think it's for a game that any game you want the player to play over 500 hours, right? I think it's imperative that there are microtransactions. And I'm not talking about any sort of like buy power. I'm talking just cosmetics, like, buy wings, things that don't affect your character at all. Just a good way for people that like die hard, love your game to support it. And let me explain why. I feel if it's a buy to play game with no cosmetics to buy and only earnable ones in game or for seasons or whatever, then what ends up happening, and we've already seen this with Diablo 3, is you get the game comes out, it's fun, and you get new seasons. Then 2 years later, and then you have very minimal content updates. You have some bug fixes, you have some balance changes, but you're never going to get like the same updates to the game as you see Path of Exile have every 3 months. Then 2 years later, an expansion comes out, everything's great again, and then that was it. There was nothing else that came out. Some Diablo first was saying, what do you mean? Diablo 3 gets so much content, it's insane. I was like, okay, you have never experienced Path of Exile or any game run by most games when there's cosmetics involved, the developers are more encouraged to pump out often content. And this was great, especially for me when I was a student, because I could play those games for free and still get an insane amount of content because people with jobs were able to support the game. And now that I've spent over, mostly on arranging events and stuff, so it sounds like an insane number, but through private leagues and cosmetic effects and giveaways, I've spent over $10,000 on Path of Exile, and stuff like that is able to help fund the game for people who are playing it for free. So I feel like it's mostly important to have cosmetics. Obviously, hopefully not as expensive ones as Path of Exile. Like wings probably shouldn't be costing $70. But like a lot of small things like cosmetic effects for like $2 to $10 is a great way to fund the game and make sure that the developers have an incentive to continue developing. Obviously, I'm very biased here because I'm a streamer, and the games I play and play actively, and especially as ARPGs are my main game, these are games that I want to get constant updates. If it's 6 months or a year between each content update, I'm very bored as a streamer, and that's hard to pour thousands of hours in. Whereas for something like The Witcher or games that I'm like only gonna play like 200 hours or less, that's not a game I would want like cosmetics in, right? It's like the only reason I like cosmetics is just I want continued development, and I feel like buy to play does not give you that. Ideally, in an ideal world, the game would be free to play and they would run the game on rainbow fumes and happiness and just continue pumping out content for free. But obviously they are doing this for money, and I feel like at least with a fully optional only cosmetic system, that is a good compromise where I get to spend exactly as much money as I want to. I never feel forced into buying any. There's several games I've played completely free. I'm not a big fan of like the pay to advance your time in Path of Exile with like stash tabs and stuff, which I consider very light pay to win. And same in like Warframe, where you can pay to like finish a construction early, which I did when I was playing it. I don't know if that's still in there, but like, there are some games that have like similar to that very, very light pay to win that most people don't consider pay to win. Not a fan of that. Like I said, I would want it to be purely cosmetic. If somebody wants to buy like a helmet that looks amazing for $100 or whatever, that's great. They're supporting development. That's good on you, dude. But yeah, buy to play, no more content. Don't like it. And both buy to play and cosmetics is like really bad in my opinion. If you're gonna have cosmetics, don't do buy to play. That's just greedy. This sort of like sums up my main thoughts. I'm sure some of you will agree. A lot of you will be vocally angry and disagree with some of it. I hope you guys enjoy my thoughts. Feel free to say like constructive criticism. Maybe. I mean, it's YouTube comments. We'll see what happens. If you want to ask me more questions about my trip from Blizzcon and stuff like that, you can watch. I'll link to the VOD. Maybe we'll upload that to YouTube too. But it's a long, like 4-hour video of me like literally talking to chat, going over Blizzcon, going over all the stuff. You can also check it on Twitch, and my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Zizaran. Thanks for watching. Try to die less than I do.